Okay. And we're just going to take it real slow with the breath at the moment, and we're going to set the intention to completely surrender. Surrendering into all layers of emotion, surrendering to God ultimately, um, to just go through whatever comes up. And even as we just set that intention to surrender completely, there is a whole bunch of fear that's kind of triggered around that. That's crying out for trust and faith. And as we go deeper with the fear, the trust and faith, I'm finding the group immersed within water. And within the water, there are like two serpents just moving around within the water, holding the focal point on the trust and faith as we drop deeper into the water. The sense of um, entrapment is coming up, which is triggering a helplessness and a self doubt, which, as we go through that process of trust and faith, the self doubt and the entrapment, the helplessness and the fear rises to the surface to be seen, which we come to the choice point of, do I choose to associate with this frequency of entrapment and helplessness? Is this really me? And through the identification, the validation of what it is that we're feeling here, it starts to separate out. And the fear based consciousness unlocks from the field. And in that process, layers of the personality that would normally be triggered by these feelings start to circulate up to the forefront. And what we're seeing here is schisms and rejection of the self, rejection of the personality that is trying to push away the entrapment, the helplessness, the self-doubt, the fear, whatever it looks like to you. And this part presenting effectively is trying to control the situation. It's trying to control the outcome by rejecting and trying to repress. So we're just going to completely acknowledge this part that is in control, that's trying to control a situation. And we want to assess the controlling aspect. When it interacts with the fear, I'm finding that the aspect is twisting, it is shutting down. There is an element of fight that's coming up within it. And this part of the control aspect may also have a bit of a negative ego that would kind of criticize um, the work of others because it doesn't align to their belief systems. It would kind of shut down a point of view from another, as an example, because it doesn't align to their reality. So the belief system and the reality. So what we can see here could be seen as a we'll take a conspiracy theorist, we'll take a non-conspiracy theorist, and where the conspiracy theorist has a different perspective, a different level of awareness that the non-conspiracy theorist would have. When they get kickback, the conspiracy theorist may say, "Oh, that's nonsense. It's not accurate at all." And then this creates a rift of separation between human to human because one is coming from one dimensional perspective, the other one is coming from a different dimensional perspective, a third and a fourth, as an example there. which is blocking the ability to see each other's point of view and where the other is coming from. So we come back to this controlling aspect. And we understand why it would go through this process. And there's triggered layers of victimization. Which bring up layers of chastisement, bring up layers of defense. And the unacceptance of the perspective of the third dimensional field, or a rejection of the third dimensional field, because where they're moving to is somewhere different, as an example. So what's going on here is a repression of third dimensional consciousness, a repression of a third dimensional reality, without seeing it as a decompressed stepping stone of polarity through to integration, processing and integration, and then into unification as the fifth. So we allow all of this information to circulate and come up to the surface there. And we're going to completely honor that aspect. We're going to honor the victim mindset that it's been through chastisement, through kind of separation, through exiling, through through all of these kind of layers of segregation, which has then impacted a kind of strong-willed, argumentative, in some cases, defensive behavioral pattern that we see on both sides of the polarity. And even as we're kind of looking through this progression here, the tightness that's coming up underneath the layers of control is really quite intense. So we just register the tightness that's coming up through the right side body, through trigger points within the controlling aspect. And we're just going to focus in on seeing both sides there. Where we've got one side being controlled by fear Another side to this being controlled by victimization or wounding, which through the layers of opposition triggers further resistance to each other's belief and opinion, therefore making more control. And as we go through this process of building awareness through the behavioral parts, we may hit into some layers of amnesia, some layers of confusion, or a shutdown of the mental field. And this is because the unconscious is yet to become conscious. And in some cases, the opposition triggers the opposition and the belief systems can also trigger cognitive dissonance. Let's bring in some clarity there. What would happen if we were to understand empathically where the other side was coming from? What have they gone through? To see how they had become shut off from other perspectives. And where the other side, or whichever side you're coming from, attempts to control the situation. Why are they trying to control it? One of them doesn't want to have their belief systems trashed and forced into something because sometimes they cannot accept it due to their level of trauma, due to what they've gone through, due to the information that's coming to them within their third dimensional reality. They cannot process the next dimensional scale up because they haven't attuned themselves to be able to perceive these things, that the information hasn't resonated for them due to conditioning. And then on the flip side, because they've been shut down so many times and called liars or conspiracy theorists, they get more rigid in their belief system and more upset or frustrated because the other side isn't getting it, which then creates a stronger current of control. to try and match your belief systems up to the reality around you or around one that is not ready to take that on board. So here we find it in a bit of a kind of sticky situation or spot as how can we bridge the two together? How can we find solution because one side is bashing their head against the wall without being able to walk around the wall because of the problem in front of them or the perceived problem in front. And the same with the other one. There's no possible evolutionary scale because what their resonance is doesn't fit to the 4D. So the resonant tone to change the landscape between the polarity thought forms into a disclosure, awareness, elevated consciousness thought form is not force, but it comes with love. The same way that when we face our higher perspectives of self to our lowest perspectives of self, the bridge of love within oneself aids for the upfolding of the parts of you that are most resistant. So let's start bridging from higher to lower. The resonant tone of love that bridges acceptance and a warming up to the parts that are within fragmentation, the parts that are unable to see truth within your own personal structure. We've used a model for a reality structure as well, which can also be worked in this way. And we're just going to start sending the love down through oppositional consciousness within one's own field. And with the bridge of love, we take it through all of these layers of control. Into that negative ego of control and force. Into restriction and the layers of compartmentalization. And it is through the releasing of control or the interception with love to control creates surrender. The love opens the field to allow control to transform into a state of surrender where it is open and receptive to you. Just take a moment to feel that love connecting into the controlling aspects and see how it feels to move into surrender. We want to kind of register the feeling of this, register the process of it, so we can start to integrate the behavior, integrate the attributes and the personalities around this. So this becomes an autonomic response over time that when you see yourself acting in a state of control, you then feed and love yourself and trust in the process to meet the level of surrender to give away the negative ego, identity, allowing coexistence, cohabitation with those that don't follow your own belief system. Maybe you don't follow your own belief system in certain parts and you're finding yourself in opposition with yourself. Ultimately, to create a peaceful internal world to match your external world as well. Wheel of navigation, the wheel of Dharma, Heaven's Gate opening, allow that recoding as we enter into the crystal cathedral built through the fields in a state of surrender, letting go of any fear of what may rise within this cathedral, without being afraid of what you might see or feel or know. And what's kind of dropping in front of me right now is a white feather. Now, this cathedral is gold or pale gold, but it's also got a whole load of black smudges around it and dark violet smudges. And as I'm observing the cathedral, it's almost as if the cathedral is going into lockdown or shut down. And then we've got this white feather coming in and what feels and looks like the Holy Spirit washing through this cathedral. Okay, so the white feather and the Holy Spirit wash through, which starts to open the cathedral where it's very tight and locked down. We can see this as metaphor for masculine, feminine imbalances because the left side of the cathedral is a bit more kind of locked and shut down here. With the Holy Spirit coming in, it's allowing the kind of rigidity of that trauma that's locked down, stuck, and controlled. And what we can see with this is where we're blocking free flow of information, we're still in a place of control, where we're not allowing ourselves to see anything, we're still in a place of control. And because of the pain in the rigidity and the fear within the rigidity, the ability to surrender is limited. And that is the way one controls their own energy fields, the way one controls one's own ability to process energetic information, and where they're holding themselves in a hanged man position by the belief systems that circulate through that rigidity and through that trauma. And we've got a lot of emerald and blue crystal tones just starting to work its way through the crystal cathedral, through the openings. that is blocking the ability to kind of assess, or was it what the emerald codes coming in, opening the field, allowing us to assess what has been locked within the perspective or within the history that's blocking the evolutionary development to move into deep relaxation and surrender to allow the field to fully open. Interesting. And what we can see through this process and understand is that actually the process of surrender doesn't have to be a scary one. And this is the evolutionary process of opening. Through surrendering the ego to God and allowing yourself to step out of control and into acceptance for whatever the circumstance, whatever the belief system, surrendering is always the key to free flow. And the trust and faith guides you through the tumultuous seas of emotion or the tumultuous seas of reality, knowing that you are guided, knowing that you are supported and protected in every way, shape, and form by your divine guidance structure and by God Source and the light of love. You are unconditionally safe. Sometimes you just have to find your way through the emotions of fear and torment, which create the control and restricts your light body, restricts your senses. So you too can find free flow and sovereignty within interdimensional movements. Let's inhale, exhale. We're going to update through all fields. We're going to update through all localized grids. Move to seal forward through all levels or layers of light. Through all bodies and through the breath of the divine, I am. Presence, inhale, exhale, recode, release, and seal.